Hi, my name is Georgie, and this is Mother Duck Sourdough. So, Mother Duck Sourdough is a microbakery that I began uh, let's say 5 years ago. So, it was 2019. My husband and I, we had twins in 2018, and by August 2019, we had our third child, and it was all a bit of a whirlwind. And having three kids so close together and a newly married couple, we'd bought a farm. Things were incredibly tight. Um, so we made the decision to move our family to the opposite side of the country. Now, for context, I run my microbakery from our farm in Southbrook, Queensland, Australia. And we moved over to Port Hedland in Western Australia, which, yes, on the western side of the country. It took us 8 days of driving to move over there. So we had three babies. Our twins were 18 months and our baby was 12 weeks old, and our Kelpie. And we put them all into our car and we moved over just to try and get ahead because life was incredibly difficult. So we left our family and friends and we worked very hard. But come 2020, and I think you know where this is going, but halfway through 2020, I was struggling with postpartum. So I had the classic combo, postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and I was starting to experience postpartum rage for the first time. My husband couldn't quite help me. He was working very hard. He was working on average 12 hours a day. So he'd be leaving 5:30 and he'd be back no earlier than 5:30 that night. So it was just me and the three kids. And for those of you who know, 12 hours by yourself with three babies is full on. And I had worked as a baker prior to getting married, prior to having kids. And the hardest part of that, and the hardest part of having twins, it's not the two babies at once. That has its challenges, but that wasn't the hardest part. It was the lifetime of being, a modern woman and a girl being told that you can do anything. You can do anything you want. But then you have twins and, you're a baker. And so you don't earn a lot of money. So to be able to put your twins into daycare, to be able to go and earn money, you don't really get much back except for no energy. So that was a very hard lesson to learn. I made it. I think I worked for 4 weeks, 2 days a week, and putting the twins into daycare was a nightmare because with twins, it's a very rigid routine, right? And daycares, like there's a lot of kids there, they can't really adhere to your routine and your structure and stuff. So you'd bring them home, it'd just be meltdown central. And that was very hard to deal with. And doing that 2 days, it nearly broke us. And we have a very good marriage. And that still to this day was the most stressful, trying time of our married life. And I realized, oh, that's right, the daycare sickness kicked in by week 5. So any working parent knows, like there's always a default parent. And if the kids got sick, which they did, you can't work. And being an employer, it is hard when you hire parents and you're like, they're not dependable, and that sucks. As the parent, like you want to be reliable, but it's impossible. It is absolutely impossible and heartbreaking. So week 5, I missed both shifts of work, by week 6, I realized like we were all of a sudden $800 in debt to the daycare because I had not earned any money. And you can't, if you don't give enough notice to the daycare that they're not going to show up, then you owe them money. So, needless to say, that near broke me. I entered into a pretty severe depression, which didn't last long, hilariously, because I wound up pregnant with my third. So that was all just an absolute roller coaster. By December 2018, with 7-month-old babies, and being pregnant, I was fully in the depths of despair because my whole personality was being like, I was going to be a working mum, like my mum, like my family, I was going to work and be a mum and show my kids how independent and how successful I could be. Life had other plans, it seems. So I tried multiple ventures. Like I tried to get back into my art. I tried to, I bake from home and nothing really scratched that itch. So we had our third baby in August. And then, like I said, by the end of November, we were driving over to Port Hedland to start anew. So 2020, midway through, I am in the thick of postpartum. And my husband's like, well, you bake sourdough already. So some of the guys at work are pretty keen to get some bread if you could bake for them. So I did. And I was making a whopping $20 a week by baking sourdough bread for my husband's colleagues. And then that grew. And then all of a sudden I'm making $50 a week. And then I started making pastries, and that was a hit. And then I started getting messages from people from around town saying, hey, I was just speaking to so-and-so who works at so-and-so, and they said you bake sourdough, and I would really like a loaf. And I'm like, well, look, I'm really sorry, I can't sell to the public because, well, it's illegal. And look, I don't have a license. So I went to the council and, well, actually, I saved up because I was only earning like $50 to $100 a week. So I saved up money and I bought a license for my kitchen. And I started an Instagram, and word traveled very fast. So I'll create another video breaking down my financial history so that you know how it all worked. But yeah, it grew from there. And then all of a sudden, by the end of 2020, COVID had affected WA. So if you're not from Australia, they pretty much shut all the borders down within Australia. So no one could travel within states. But in WA, Western Australia, which is huge, and there are all intrastates. So they cut those borders as well. So we were stuck in our little desert town. And really, so everyone got into camping and stuff because that's all we could do. And yeah, so I had my fourth baby at the end of, 2021, September 2021. So by the end of 2020, I was pregnant. September 2021, I'd had my fourth baby. And that is when Mother Duck Sourdough went ballistic. And it was one of the best times of my life. So I had stopped at about 6 months pregnant. I had stopped baking because I was too freaking tired. I had 3 toddlers now. 2 were toilet trained. And if you know, you know. Like that was BS. But I did get into cocktails at that point in time. So we did turn that into a bit of a festive freaking occasion. So yes, that was that. And by 3 months postpartum, Oh, actually, no, I should say I'd had my baby mid-September, and my birthday is the 25th of September. And I remember on my birthday, I was finalizing an application to the local council for a grant for small businesses. And my husband thought, well, it'd be crazy not to go for it, because by this point, we hadn't been there 3 years yet. And we're like, we're going to be here at least another couple of years. Like, and we don't know, like life is good. Take away all the COVID stuff. Obviously, we're not going to cover freaking COVID. So, yeah, I went for the application. I got it. I got the grant, and that allowed me to purchase proper branding for Mother Duck. And it was really exciting. And the girl that I hired, Telling Designs, she hand drew my duck, the flying duck. And it is I think to this day, my favorite drawing I've ever seen. I just think it is the cutest freaking duck. And yeah, so you'll see it plastered everywhere. But yeah, so that was really exciting. But she has quite a following. So she had shared the branding that she had done, and it was kind of an announcement essentially to the town that I was reopening. I was 2.5 months post, baby at that point, and I was shitting myself. I was terrified. I'm like, how the hell am I going to do this? So it was January, and the twins. Oh, that's a complete lie. December. So it was the start of January, and she had shared a reel about my branding, and I start getting messages. People are excited, and I'm like, fuck, like, excuse my language. I don't even know, like, if I'm that good. Like, everyone's getting excited, and it was wild. It was a really wild time. And so I reopened at the end of January, and my first week was $600, which I had not earned. I'd not earned before. Because 500 was pretty good for me. A week, 500 a week, pretty good. My first week, I earned 600. My second week, I earned, I think, somewhere between 800 and 1,000. Then I remember my third week, I'd earned $1,200. But by the fourth week, this was where it was getting really freaking mental. I'd earned over $2,000, and I was operating Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I was doing breads and pastries, and it was just ballistic. Like, 4 kids. My 2 eldest, the twins, had started kindy. I'd had a 2-year-old and a newborn baby, and like this. So by this point, like, he's on a bottle. Ooh. And it was stupid. And I was getting up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock to start making things. I remember there were a couple of nights where I was still awake at 11, having a whiskey, making my pastry, and it was a full-on time. And because part of me was like, I have to get up in like an hour, say midnight, to like the baby will wake up. So I may as well just stay awake and keep working. So I realized after the 4th week, it was very exciting to earn that much money, but I could see the signs. I'm like, I'm going to burn out for sure. So my husband, who is an engineer, he had already set me up a spreadsheet with all my recipes and things, but we actually I could pop in my orders and I could set my quantities, and then I'd set the quantities to make $1,200 a week. And that worked. And in that time, like, we moved house. And yeah, but then by the end of 2022, we'd found out, mid-22, sorry, we'd found out that John had received a promotion. And so we had to relocate to Perth, which is the capital city of Western Australia, which was between 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers from Port Hedland. Which, look, from a small town girl, like that was very exciting. I'd not really been to Perth except for like a COVID quarantine. So, yeah, it was very exciting, but also incredibly sad because I was really starting to make a headway for Mother Duck. I was I was looking at new spaces, some girls who were opening some shops. They had a kitchen space for me and it was just the dream, and then there was a food festival at Port Hedland and I got to present at the demonstrations along with Julie Goodwin and Mark Olive, two Australian celebrity chefs. So it was a very, very cool time of my life. But yeah, it was just the prospect of moving to a capital city. It was very exciting. But I hit a wall, a very big mental wall. I tried to reopen the bakery, but I was flat, potentially burnt out. So I went on to antidepressants and just tried to make it all work, really. And yeah, it was a bit of a blur over 2 years that we spent in Perth. Met some of my favorite people. We made some really good friends, had a really good neighborhood that we lived in. And yeah, it was a really special time of my life. It was just mentally very difficult. So, yes, which now brings us to today. September 2024. The twins are in year 1. Fletcher was in kindy. That's my third. And Patty, my youngest, was 2 years old, had just turned 2 years old. And it was time to go back to Queensland. And so we packed up, we got our camper, we packed up our car, put our life into a shipping container, sent it over to Queensland, and we hit the road for 3 months. And as crazy as that sounds, it was amazing. It really, I don't know, it lit a spark in me that that's what life is meant to be like. You're meant to be at home, you're meant to spend time with your kids, and just like, if you take everything out of life, you've got your family. And it was really fun. It was entirely exhausting, and there were a lot of times when I was not a good person to be around. I'll admit that. As a mother of 4, within that 3 years, you do get to know yourself and you do find your limits. And yeah, I've learned a lot of things about myself. And yeah, running a microbakery is one of those things that is the easy part of my life, but making it work with everything else is the challenge. So that's what I'm going to talk about on this channel. So here I am on my farm in Southbrook, and we have a very idyllic life here. It's quiet. I didn't know that I would love that so much. It's just our 4 kids. And yes, my husband, who has a job here at Toowoomba, and he travels around the country, or countryside, I should say. He's only ever gone for a night at a time now, which is really nice. And yeah, it's just life on our farm. So yeah, we're trying to get an orchard going. John has created a vegetable garden. I have realized my boundaries. I wanted to be a vegetable garden, but I have no interest. Just going to put that out there. I like planting. I like harvesting. I don't like going down there to the vegetable garden, and I don't like watering down there. There's something about snakes and stuff. Whereas in my yard, I can garden all day. It is the one thing that is my love and my passion is gardening. And I would never, ever turn that into an occupation because it would kill it, I reckon. It gets the anger out of my soul, and I feel very grateful to have this space to be able to do whatever I want to it. So yeah, comment below what you would like to see from this channel. I will be covering how to set up a microbakery in your home, particularly in Australia. I know there's a few channels from America. There are channels from the UK. Really great people, and they also cover techniques on sourdough and pastry and stuff. I can do that. Teaching is not my forte, though. Yes, I like to just kind of go off the cuff a little bit. Maybe that's your thing. Maybe you could comment and say, hey, show us how you just sporadically throw stuff together and make something. Maybe that could be your thing. Happy to help. So yeah, anyway, follow me along on this journey, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, it could be fun. And I will teach you all about life with 4 kids and running a bakery from home. All right, well, it's a pleasure to meet you guys, and I look forward to seeing you again. All right, bye. Please.